and welcome to For the Love of Nature, a podcast where we tell you everything you need to know about nature and probably more than you wanted to know. I'm Laura.
And I'm Katy, and today is International Bat Appreciation Day. Woohoo!
Woo!
Which everybody knows if you've listened to these before. I love bats.
Yeah, they're so cool.
They are so neat. I think that they get a bad rap way too much. They're not creepy. They're just really
No,
really,
I actually
neat.
think they're pretty cute. In almost every way. There are some that are like real freaky looking, but in general, I think bats are pretty cute.
They are. They're really, really neat. So we're going to be talking about just all kinds of bats.
Yeah, kind of like Bat 101 a little bit, I think you could say.
Yeah, I would say Bat 101.
And like we'd love to dive in deeper probably in another future episode or bring on an expert to talk.
Yes.
But Katy and I talked about how like today we're just going to go over, like what makes bats special, and then we'll split it up between the two different major groups of bats. So, Katy, you want to give the intro?
Yeah. I'll give you a little bit of basic information. So bats are pretty much found all over the world. There are a total of 1,400 species spread out throughout the planet.
Which is wild.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know all 1,400, but now that I saw like a number, I'm like, I'm going to know them all.
I was just going to say, I would be most impressed person.
I am determined to know them all.
Well, I know it's only, second to rodents?
I think
so.
Know.
I think it's only second to rodents by the amount of species that there are.
They're so cool because they're just so cool and they're so diverse.
They're so specialized.
Yeah, so interesting. All right, so what makes bats unique compared to other mammals then? Well, flight for first of all. They're the only mammals that are capable of sustained flight, like actual flying,
not gliding.
Yeah, or falling with style, kind of. So it is definitely an actual flight. So their wings are modified arms. Which is so cool. They're little hands. Is. Yeah, it is. They just have elongated fingers. And then there's the thin membrane in between there. And so there's, I would say, 4 different things that make them different. And flight and then unique anatomy are kind of, 1 and 2 right there. So they go together because it is interesting. It's their pinky, ring finger, and I think part of their middle finger, if you were kind of look at that, and that's how those elongated fingers. And then in between those is really, really thin membrane. And when I mean thin, I mean like thin.
Like almost see-through. Yeah.
Yes. And, oh, God, whenever I was in Australia, there were so many bats get tangled in barbed wire fences.
So sad.
Like big fruit bats and stuff. Oh, so sad. But they are gnarly, that membrane, once it gets ripped. Ugh.
I bet. Ooh, that gives me too much to think about, because I think about the webbing between my own fingers, and it's not even that thin.
Yup. Right? Yeah. So horrible. So, all right. So flight and then the unique anatomy that they have. The other thing that, as far as anatomy goes, besides like the fingers, of course, they have the large ears, complex auditory systems that allows them to hear and interpret echoes of echolocation calls or other things I'm going to talk about.
I'm going to talk about that more with mine.
Okay, perfect. Well, the other thing is echolocation. So most bats do use echolocation. I'm going to talk about some research that's been going on with, because Laura's going to talk about more of the microbats and everything. I'm going to be talking about fruit bats. And for a long time, well, I don't want to get into it, but
yeah, we'll talk about echolocation. Yeah.
So echolocation, Laura, I'll go ahead and let you cover more into that. But echolocation, and then the fourth one is that they're the only mammals that hang upside down on a consistent basis. No other mammals.
Makes sense. Can you imagine a head rush? Like, I like to hang out upside down in a tree every once in a while myself. But not for any long period of time.
Gosh, I can't take that pressure. I don't know why.
Well, maybe now as an adult it might be different. It's been a while, but
try it, because I can't, like, showing Luke even like a headstand or something. I'm like, can't do it.
I do get a head rush now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Laura wants to be upside down all the time now. That's her new thing.
Dude, that's Luke all the time. Like, he will lay off the side of the couch.
Yeah.
With his head down and his butt.
Goes, so she can only say, she can't say it all right now, but she goes, a down. Right. And then she's pointing at the floor. And I'm like, you go upside down. And she goes, mama. And she wants me to go upside down on the floor. So all I have to do is bend over and put my head on the floor. And then she'll do it next to me. So we're just looking at each other upside down.
Kids are weird, man.
All about being upside down. In church the other day, like on Easter, she's just upside down in my lap, just giggling.
Yeah.
Hanging over the side of my legs.
Well, besides, young children, bats are the only mammals that consistently hang upside down. So why do they hang upside down? Well, because it's an efficient way for them to rest and conserve energy. if you think about like us whenever we're sitting upright, we don't quite realize it because we're adapted for it, but all the energy that we expend to hold us upright, there's actually a lot that goes into it. Hence why laying down is so relaxing.
But why don't bats lay down instead of hang upside down?
Well, because think about it, if they're going to be flying.
Oh, right. They're
flying,
not ready for flight. They can't lounge.
Yeah, they can't sprawl out on their sides.
That be, though? A whole tree full of just lounging bats.
That would be
not
actually
upside down,
cute.
just chilling.
Just lounging, yeah. Because that does, if a predator or whatever comes, nearby, they can literally just let go of their back feet and then drop into a flight. So that's another reason why they hang upside down instead of lay down. But it would be really, really cute.
I was just reading today that it's a misconception that they go to the bathroom upside down.
Correct.
Which is cool, because I definitely think that people think that they go to the bathroom upside down.
I think I have, is it video or picture? I have one or the other whenever I was in Australia that I didn't even know I got, but of bats going to the bathroom.
That they just flip up and hold on with their thumbs.
Yeah. It's like quick. I don't even know how to describe it, but I don't want to say it's cute, but it is because it's like their little fingies.
Yeah, their little thumb that they've got. Yeah. But they give birth upside down, right?
I
think I've seen a video of that happening, which seems insane from any of you ladies out there that has given birth. Can you imagine fighting gravity on that one?
Upside down.
What the heck? And then having to catch the baby before it falls.
Right. Another benefit about hanging upside down is that it helps bats regulate their body temperature. So because bats have high surface area to volume ratio, they lose heat quickly. You think about those wings, right? Because there are blood vessels and everything through those wings. So all of that, skin, everything being exposed to air. So by hanging upside down, they can reduce the surface area and minimize heat loss. That's why they kind of all curl up. Like they wrap their wings around them. It's like like a little blankie. I get it. And then there's some other research that's showing that it's also thought to be beneficial for bats' respiratory and circulatory systems. When a bat hangs upside down, its lungs and heart are positioned in a way that allows for optimum blood flow and oxygen exchange, which would make sense because they've evolved that way.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Right. Like we wouldn't be like that.
Yeah. We get a head rush. Our bodies aren't meant to hang upside down.
You literally die from hanging upside down for too long.
Yeah. Ugh. So anyway, that's a brief overview on just bats in general.
Okay, cool. Well, if you don't mind, I'll go first.
Go ahead,
So I'm doing the microbats, also known as Microchiroptera, and that's 70% of all bat species.
Yep.
There's a couple of things that allows us to lump them together. The big thing and kind of what I was thinking about splitting this podcast was about doing the insectivores. So most of the microbats are insectivores, which means that they eat insects. This is the majority of also what is found in the U.S. And like Katy said, these species can be found all over the world except for a few islands and the polar regions. So a general description of the microbats is that they are generally smaller, with wingspans of less than 2 feet. Of course, there's always exceptions in nature. But the most extreme of this is the smallest bat, which is the Kitty's hognose bat, which weighs about the weight of 2 Skittles, which is the best way to think about measurements. Right? 2 Skittles, and is the size of a bumblebee. Ah! Looks so cute. So yeah, they're generally tiny, which makes sense because if you have to be eating insects, you can't be too big because they're just you'd have to be eating far too many insects. You have to be small if you're going to be an insect eater. They also typically have very large ears in proportion to the rest of their body size to help them with echolocation. They have small eyes, but they are not blind or anything like that. They can see about as well as a human can. And they typically have tiny scrunched or pug faces. They don't need a lot of face. And they have big ears.
Why is their face scrunched? They just don't need a lot of face.
They don't need it. Well, they also think that it can help them it helps with echolocation. The more wrinkles there are.
Yeah.
Just funny to think about. The microbats can be divided further into some other categories depending on other behaviors or adaptations, such as where they hibernate. You can divide them into the tree hibernators or the cave hibernators. The bats that hibernate in trees are usually solitary, and the cave ones are typically gregarious, meaning they're very social.
Or buildings, crevices, chimneys.
Right.
Because of urbanization. Right. Anything else that they can find.
Any nook and cranny bats can be.
Yep.
You could divide them based on how many babies they usually have. And really, all of these categories, these microbats can kind of be split into the two. You've got the ones that hibernate in trees. Those guys usually have twins or more. Some of them have up to 4 babies at a time. They're typically solitary in general. Like, they don't raise their babies in groups. They hibernate alone. And the ones that hibernate in trees typically have furry tails because they use those tails as a blanket because they don't cuddle up with their friends.
Yep.
Which is cute. The ones that hibernate in caves, like I said, they usually are doing everything together. They hibernate together, they raise their babies together. Although, interestingly enough, they only have 1 pup, which is what you call a baby bat. You'd think if you were going to be in a big social setting, you could afford to have lots of babies since everyone's just watching your kids. And that if you had to be alone, you wouldn't have as many children.
Yeah.
But it's not like that. I don't know. And they have less hair on their tails. And then one other way you could divide up the microbats depends on how they feed. So there are the aerial insectivores, which means those that eat on the wing, which are the ones that we're typically thinking about. But there's also ones that are called insectivorous gleaners, which are the ones that eat insects and other prey from the ground or off of vegetation. So the aerial insectivores, the ones that are eating on the wing, they're going for the small bugs that are flying around.
Yeah.
Moths, mosquitoes, gnats, things like that. The gleaners are going for the bigger stuff. So they are more of like pouncing on their prey and scooping it up, and they're getting like katydids and like larger, grasshoppers, crickets, things like that. So they can afford to spend more energy getting those larger meals.
And that's how we did the bat research. So whenever we were doing census counts, I think I've told the story at least a couple times on it, maybe. We would put up the mist nets, which are like these very thin, like, strings that go up and down. And then at the bottom of these strings, it's almost like a V. And then on the V, on top of the V, there's plastic. All right. And so they're just flying, minding their own business.
Getting clotheslined.
Just getting clotheslined. Fall down into the bottom of the V. They're completely okay. As horrible as they're making it sound, they're completely okay. And then once they get hit, like, then they fly into the string, and then they're like, oh my goodness, I gotta get out of here. They crawl up there, but then they crawl up between the cloth and the plastic. So then they can't get out. And then so then we would come in, pull them out from underneath the plastic, get all their little measurements, and then we'd put them all, because they were social. I can't remember the species. I'll have to look, because there were several different ones that we would catch. And that was, again, part of the reason why we were doing that as a census count. And so then we would, and it was interesting because if we did catch different species, they separated. They like segregated themselves. And so we would put like the bats that were all clumped together in a clump, put it in a little baggie, and then you would tie it either onto like your bra strap, or I always had a necklace, so I would tie it onto my necklace and put it in the top of my shirt.
Bag of bats.
Just a little bag of bats. So that's against like my body heat as we're like walking back down, because we would keep them then in a room and everything that was nice and warm for them during the day, because they do get cold pretty quickly. And then we'd release them like as the sun's going down the next night, so so they could go out there and stuff like that. But we were catching all the ones that were swooping and catching bugs in midair, because as they're like finding their insects, just flying right into the mist net, and then catch them up.
Yeah. So they were the aerial guys.
Yep.
So as I mentioned about dividing them into 2 groups because of hibernation, so these microbats they have 2 options for when it gets cold. As Katy said, they lose body heat very quickly, which is important when you're flying because you don't want it to heat.
Yeah.
But you get cold.
You don't want it cold, yeah.
So you can either migrate, and some bats do, they leave the area, or they hibernate. If they hibernate, they cannot hibernate for too long because even though they're going into a state of torpor where everything slows down, their metabolism, their heart, all of that, they're still burning so many calories, and they're such a small animal that they really can't afford to burn too much, even though they fatten up before they go to sleep. They typically only go to sleep for a short amount of time. Unless they're in a very cold place, then they go for longer, but it's riskier. And a lot of times the bats don't stay asleep the whole time. They might wake up, get a quick snack, go back to sleep. But every time they wake up, it's extremely costly. Research has shown that for each instance of disturbance from hibernation, a bat may expend up to 67 hibernation days of fat. So every time they wake up, they just lost 67 days of sleep.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Without enough fat to survive the winter, bats might succumb to starvation or the cold. So it's very important to not disturb them. It has to be on their terms. They have to consent to losing those 67 days of sleep.
I mean, I can't blame them either.
Oh, heck, you know how mad you'd be if somebody woke up and like, I just lost 2 months. 2 months. And so that was from an article where I got that from. But wow, fascinating.
Crazy. Yeah.
So because a lot of them are eating on the wing, these bats in particular heavily rely on echolocation. And everything I know about echolocation, I pretty much got from Magic School Bus.
I'm right.
It was a great episode. I highly recommend it if you want to learn about echolocation or bats in general. You know, they're emitting these ultrasonic sounds that almost none of them human ears can hear. There's a couple of species that we can hear, but very few. Mm-hmm. They're making these noises. And not just with their mouths, they can actually make them through their noses too, which I thought was cool. Mm-hmm. So they make these sounds, and then they're listening for the sound to bounce back to them. That bounce back tells them the size of the object, the speed the object is going, the direction it's in, and even the texture of the object. So am I looking at like a soft fuzzy moth?
Yeah.
Am I looking at a hard wall? Like, you know. Yeah. So it does give them a sound picture, essentially. And when they're hunting, they're making these sounds very, very quickly because they need instant feedback very quickly because whatever they're hunting is also trying to escape and is changing direction. So when they're not, when they're not actively hunting, they're just occasionally listening for echoes. But when they're hunting, it's like... And, we've actually... I'm not surprised because I guess it'd be very hard for us to know. We can't hear it, so how would we know that bats are doing this? But
unless you have an anabat box, like an anabat.
Well, right, nowadays. Yeah. But so the first instance of us knowing this was in 1940, was when echolocation with bats was discovered. So I mean, yeah. And like I said, I'm not that surprised, but it was not that long ago. I guess with the whole, like, sonar thing, we started finally being able to, like, hear stuff. Another cool thing about bats, and a lot of these insectivore ones are hibernating, they can delay fertilization while they sleep, which they are the only mammal that can do that. There are other mammals that can delay implantation. So, like, egg is fertilized, they can just stop it from growing. Bats can just not let the egg get fertilized. They're just holding on until they wake up, and then they let the magic happen, which I guess saves the calories,
Yeah. No,
not only is it not implanting and growing, but there is just no metabolism happening until they are ready for it, which is very convenient. And because, as the insect eaters, most insects are flying around at night. And they're coming out from under cover when it gets dark out. So the whole, the reason why... There's a lot of reasons why bats are nocturnal. But one of the big ones is that's when their food comes out.
Yep.
And they are major predators of these night-flying insects. They are known to be able to eat up to 3,000 insects in one night. Like, it is...
Which is great for humans,
though. Yeah, such good pest control. Bats have been known to, not just mosquitoes, but... like crop-eating moths and things like that, like seriously beneficial pest control. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of, one in particular, really cool microbat, which is the Mexican free-tailed bat.
Yes!
That's in North America.
Yep.
It's got 2 records to its name, which is why I'm mentioning it. First of all, it is the fastest mammal, clocking in at 100 miles per hour. So we all know cheetahs, fastest land mammal. Mexican free-tailed bats are the fastest flying. And they're even cooler, like, peregrine falcons are really fast. But they are getting their speed when they dive. Mexican free-tailed bats, it's pure wing power, no diving involved. 100 miles an hour flapping. Okay? That's, if you guys listen to our cryptozoology one, that's Mothman fast.
That's Mothman fast.
Not nearly as big. But as fast as Mothman.
And Mexican free-tailed are the ones that we have here in Texas.
Yes, and so that's the other thing, and particularly about Texas. Their other record is that they are found in the largest concentrations of any mammal. Yeah. In Texas's Bracken Cave, you can find 15 to 20 million bats in one spot, which is wild.
Yeah. And I do know that that Bracken colony, I think it's something about, like, it's estimated that they can consume over, I think it's like 100 tons of moths during the summer every night. 100 tons. Like, absorb that for a second.
I can't, because moths weigh nothing. So there's no way. What? That's crazy. How can there be enough moths? Like, how can there be so
Texas,
wild?
Man. There's so many insects
So
here.
many moths.
Yeah.
So those were the insectivores of the microbats. I'm not diving into this because it would probably should be a whole nother episode, and that's like the outliers.
I'm totally fine with doing another episode on bats.
Oh, totally. Because these ones, I would really like to dive into some individual bats.
Oh, absolutely.
Because these guys are, you've got your insectivore eater, your insect eaters, your fruit eaters, and then the weirdos. And they're still like microbats, but they're the ones that are eating fish. It's like the greater bulldog bat, frogs, lizards, mice, birds, and even other bats.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a bat that I was reading about, the ghost bat, who's just dropping onto prey from above and just eating a mice. That is wild.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the vampire bats, only a few species that drink animal blood. And I was reading one where it was a scientist one time saw a vampire bat mimicking a chick. It crawled up to a hen, I guess making noises. The hen wasn't even a little bit disturbed. She lifted her wing up for it to crawl underneath, and it just fed there in complete peace, and then crawled back
because whenever they feed, what's it called? Whenever they feed, they
have like an anesthetic, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's not hurt.
Yeah, so that they don't. But
really don't know. My baby, my gross little furry. Okay, and then just
a different color than all of them. Kind of, scraggly, just totally different. Come on under, like.
Yeah. So that was microbats quickly, but love them, and they're in the U.S. We've got the most. By far are the insect eaters. We've got a few of the fruit eaters, but not very many. So definitely what I'm most familiar with.
Yeah, I've been down to Austin to see under Congress Bridge, the huge colony that flies out, and that's pretty cool. But I know Bracken Cave is outside of San Antonio, and I so desperately want to make a trek down there.
I just can't even imagine that many animals in one place.
Oh, I just love
20 million.
Oh,
20 million.
Gosh.
The smell.
The smell alone.
The guano. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how big the colonies were that I saw whenever we were in Australia, but what I'm going to talk about and what I saw a lot of in Australia were the fruit bats, the megabats.
Yeah.
And that is a whole other thing. Because there's one thing. Big. Yeah, because they're tiny dogs. And so, and they look like tiny dogs. And so that was like a whole other thing to wrap your brain around, because whenever I was up in far northeast Queensland and Cairns, right out along the ocean there, like as soon as the sun starts setting, because they're in the trees there all day, and then at night is when they start taking on.
And there's just like flying dogs everywhere.
Everywhere, and there's so
that's wild.
Just so many of them, but they're huge, and so like just wrapping your brain around like those aren't birds, those are bats. Like it is so cool, but also just like, I don't know. I gotta get back to Australia and get like better videos and pictures and things like that. But anyway, so I'm gonna talk about the megabats and fruit bats. They're generally larger than insect-eating bats, with a wingspan that ranges from 6 inches up to 6 feet, depending on the species. Their bodies are covered with fur that can range from brown to gray, and their wings are, like I said before, the thin membranous with a webbed structure that allows them to fly the long distances. Fruit bats are distinguished by their large eyes and ears, which help them to navigate in the dark if they need to. Even fruit bats, like, I know whenever I was down there, farmers, they'll cover their fruit trees at night, like with the netting and things like that, to keep them all away, because they'll still go out at night and munch on the fruit and everything. They have sharp little teeth, which can, bite. I don't want to say bite through mist nets, because that's why they have them up, but bite through like the skin of a lot of the tougher fruits.
Well, yeah.
And a lot of them have different tongues that are adapted to be able to pull out like nectar and juices and things like that from various fruits. Because a lot of them, they're not going to sit there like munching on a peach. You know what I mean? Like with their two little like bat fingers. Cute. That would be adorable. We need that drawn up. Yeah,
I love to watch the babies eat, like when they on TikTok videos when they're feeding bananas and their whole little mouth is just like their cheeks are all full.
If you want a good one to follow, shout out, it's Tolga Bat Hospital, Tolga. It's in Queensland somewhere. I actually visited them whenever I was over there. Tolga Bat Hospital, they do a lot of stuff, and I'll talk a little bit about what they particularly focus on here in a little bit. But they post tons of content. A lot of it is fruit bats, and just watching them eat. God, they're so cute.
Yeah.
Anyway, fruit bats are found in many tropical and subtropical regions around the world, including Africa, Asia, Australia, and the Pacific Islands. They typically roost in trees during the day and can be found in a variety of habitats, including the rainforest, savannas, coastal regions. They're typically social animals that live in large colonies that can range in size from like few individuals, if need be, to tens of thousands.
Yeah, I know you've got in the fruit eaters, there's those little like tent making bats. There's just a few of them, but they all live in that little house, like tent, like leaf house.
Yeah.
So
cute. Bats are amazing. They use a variety of vocalizations and scent marking to communicate with each other and have been observed engaging in complex social behavior such as sharing food and grooming each other, which I have seen both of those, which again, they're just like puppies that hang upside down. Fruit bats, they are primarily nocturnal and spend much of their time foraging for food at night. There are times, it's not like they sleep all day. Right. They kind of get that reputation. They definitely don't. Almost like, I don't know, if you're a parent. Too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they kind of like nap in like little segments. So they're up during the day. And so whenever we went to see a colony of bats, fruit bats during the day, they're still moving around and stuff. It's not like they're just like hanging. They look like a bunch of hanging dead bats. Like they're moving, they're going to the bathroom, they're doing stuff. But they are important. Just like every other bat, they're important pollinators and seed dispersers for many plant species, particularly in tropical rainforests, where they help to maintain the health of pretty much the entire ecosystem. And there are, again, just like there are some insect species that only help to disperse certain trees, and like that one species is heavily relied on. Same thing with bats. There are some species out there. Yep. There are some species out there that if those bats weren't around, that product that we get would not exist, which would be unfortunate for tequila. Like other bats, fruit bats are able to navigate in the dark using echolocation. So, pause, time out. It used to be, at least whenever we were younger, it used to be told that the tiny bats and microbats used echolocation. Larger bats, megabats, did not. That is now, we found out, incorrect.
It makes sense. Why wouldn't you utilize it if you had the ability? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or obviously, the fruit bats are using their sense of smell and sight. Yeah. But so sometimes are the little guys, too.
So, us used to think that overall fruit bats can't use sound to navigate, which, again, is an ability that used to only be known through microbats. But a new study revealed that these bats can indeed echolocate, but instead of generating sounds with their larynx, like a lot of them do, a lot of them use their wings. By setting up a series of flying tasks, the scientists were able to determine if a fruit bat's sound, the faint clicks synced in their wing beats, were useful in generating sonic maps to navigate in the dark. In one experiment, the animals were trained to discriminate between two large surfaces, a reflective board and a piece of fabric, and land on the board. When the lights were turned off, the bats completed the task and landed on the board, although rather clumsily, like 70% of the time.
Yeah, because they're still relying probably a lot on their eyes and stuff.
Absolutely. The scientists also made the bats fly through a dark room strung with mazes of wire.
Oh, jeez.
Mist nets. The fruit bats failed at this task, repeatedly crashing into the wires, which were 100 times thicker than those of the other bat species were able to detect and avoid.
I think it's like a normal bat would be able to, or the micro guys would be able to detect that
100 times thinner. Yeah.
So they were giving these guys the benefit. They were given a handicap.
Benefit of the doubt.
Then
they still can't.
Yeah.
Still can't do it. The fruit bat's shaky performance on the night vision tasks indicate that although they do possess echolocation, theirs is more rudimentary version of what the microbats is, suggesting that echolocation may have evolved and been lost many times throughout its evolution in bats.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it may have started, stopped, started, stopped.
I feel like it's how I navigate at night.
Just haphazardly, like
listen to see if I hear it. Yeah, no, I don't. I think it'd be really cool to utilize echolocation more as humans. Some humans are really good at it.
Like, yeah, some have figured it out.
But like, I think it'd be wicked to like really be able to do it well.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
Just clicking through my house at night so I don't hit things. I run into things all the time.
No,
even in
daylight. Yeah, I run into
that's
crap
just a part
all
of
the
being
time.
ADHD, just not being like spatially aware of things.
Just
but like, it'd be nice to have an extra hand at.
Right. So some other research though that's being done, and this was across all bats. There's a project that is studying bats in general, and it's the Bat1K project. This project aims to sequence the genomes of all 1,400 living species of bats, including fruit bats, in order to better understand their evolution and ecology. And again, just like everything else, that by studying the genetic differences between the bat species, researchers hope to gain insights into how bats have adapted different environments and developed unique biological features, such as echolocation. Because again...
Well,
I was going to say, like, understanding the evolution of where they're coming from as we're destroying their habitats, we have to figure out, okay, we need to kind of help them out in a way of, we got to understand the past to figure out what we could be doing better for the future, sort of thing.
Well, and it's also, they're like one of the fastest evolving animals. Like, they have found so many niches to fill.
Oh, so
like,
many.
They are so quick
Unique.
at evolving.
Yeah. Very, very quick. So that's just a little general information about the fruit bats, and I want to talk about a couple of the threats that are happening with bats. Now, the reason why I was at Toga Bat Hospital, what makes them unique is something that in that area, there's a high rate of tick paralysis. And it's a very rare condition that occurs, and a person can get it too, just because the bats are so tiny, it affects them more. And it's whenever they're bitten by certain species of ticks. These ticks release toxin into the bloodstream and can cause a range of symptoms, including muscle weakness, numbness, and difficulty breathing. In severe cases, tick paralysis can be fatal. Now, and often cases with bats, it's seen as being fatal because they end up falling to the ground, they can't move, and then they become preyed upon. So while tick paralysis is typically associated with mammals such as dogs, cats, and humans, which is normally whenever you hear about it, it's often, especially in that region, observed in bats. And that's where like Toga Bat Hospital comes in, because that's where a lot of, during tick season, they get a ton of calls for that. And then, they still do a lot of rescues with, bats getting hung up in barbed wire and stuff, but they get a lot of calls on down bats because of tick paralysis. And so they help nurse them back to health and, help them get healthy, strong, and then re-release them. So another huge threat, which this is, happening with all bats, is just habitat destruction. Yeah. Just everywhere. Same thing like birds. Like peregrine falcons, they've adapted that nice, even the cities and stuff like that all the time. Bats, they're not going to be, they can be in the cities, but it's not like you're going to see, it's not ideal, and it's not like you're going to see, tons of, a huge colony. And now I say that, and we have the one in Austin that's under the bridge, but even there, like,
but that's only because that's allowed. They could try and get rid of that colony.
Yeah.
A lot of places would try and get rid of stuff like that.
Yep. Many bat species, they rely on forests for roosting, foraging. Deforestation has just been annihilating them. And like Laura and I talked about, yes, bats get a bad rap all the time. And that's been, in the past with movies and things like that. I'm really waiting for bats to become like one of these. How for a while it was like llamas and sloths were like the popular. Dude, I'm so waiting for bats to hit. It's gotta hit eventually.
Yeah. It's just one of the nocturnal creatures always get a bad one because
they do
think we're afraid of the dark, and then they look totally different than us.
Yeah.
Even though we're
pretty, they fly.
They fly, but we're still mammals together. But a lot of people are afraid of rabies. Although you're more likely to get rabies from skunks and foxes than you are from bats.
Oh, absolutely. Or I feel like a dog, because the chances. Okay, there's under no situation, normal situation, should you be touching a bat. Like, even if it's at your house, like if it's somehow in your house or whatever like that, open up a window, close the door. It'll fly out at night. Like, it's going, It doesn't want to be there.
Although a lot of doctors now are saying, like, if you have evidence of having had bats in your houses, you should just go get a rabies shot because it can bite you and you wouldn't know. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I think, I mean, err on the side of caution, absolutely. But I don't know the, I don't know.
Yeah,
rate
bats are not... They're just, rabies doesn't happen as often, I think, as people think that it does in them as a species, and then bats don't land on people.
Yeah, no. They're not actively landing in people's hair.
They have echolocation for a reason. They're trying
to not
avoid
do that.
You.
To not do that.
We had bats multiple times in our house as kids. One flew right, I had hanging curtains around my bed, and one flew right up over the curtain and smacked into the window trying to get out. Scared the living daylights out of me. But I think they kept crawling in through, like, I don't know, the dryer vent. Something. Like some kind of little...
They kept getting in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much for them to get in, but again, I mean, as we're destroying more and more of their forest... They're
trying to find a spot.
Yeah, they're just trying to find a spot, figuring out how they can survive and everything. And they are important. Like we talked about, the number of insects that a colony can eat in a night is just insane. Just
right.
Absolutely insane.
Pest control for disease, for crops, annoyance...
So many.
Like
tequila.
Yeah. I mean, all the pollination that they do, and that they're part of the food chain themselves for other things eating.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's fruit bats.
So happy International Bat Day, everybody. We hope you love bats a little bit more, and don't go out and hug a bat, but
I love bats.
Help spread the word, appreciate them. This is the time of year where they're starting to wake up and flying around. I think I saw one just the other night. So right as the sun starts to set, try and find an open area and look up, and you might see some bats trying to get some insects on the wing, and just know that they're going to do their thing, and just appreciate them for doing it.
And if you can get pictures, send me pictures. I love bats. I just really like bats. They're just so cool.
Yeah, they're really, really cool.
All right, guys, make sure you reach out to us on Twitter and Patreon. You can search for us at For a Love of Nature, and then you'll find us and support us if you can, so we can keep bringing you great content week after week.
Yep, and hopefully you know a little bit more, maybe even more than you wanted to, but that your curiosity is piqued, and we hope that you'll tune in next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.